Well, welcome to part one of this legendary day trip that my friend Jack Schweitzer and I did out of Eagle Nest up through the high and the low roads around Santa Fe and the wonderful out of the way backwoods historic areas. And you're going to not be listening to me these next few videos. You're going to be listening to my friend and historian, Jack. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. Here we go. Part one.
Okay. All right. We're
Tell me when.
okay. We're good. We're recording.
Okay, welcome to Taos. We've left our base camp in Eagle Nest, New Mexico. It's about a 32-mile drive to where we're at right now. It says, welcome to Taos. The old sign was a better one that said, welcome to Taos, soul of the American Southwest, which it is. And we're going to talk a little bit about Taos as I bump off the road here. We're coming out of the Rio de Taos Canyon, which is a little stream here. They're going to restore Rio Grande cutthroat trout on. And as this is one of the traditional routes out of Taos heading east, although we're traveling west on it right now. Santa Fe would be to the left on the cutoff. We're taking the old canyon road, or near it. The old canyon road was actually on the left-hand side here across this little arroyo, which contains the Don Fernando de Taos River. And we're going to get glimpses way out in the distance, which you're not going to be able to tell, but we're looking out across the Rio Grande Valley, sometimes referred to, but not often, as the Taos Valley. It's the Rio Grande Valley. And this is an old town. Talk a bit about Taos. Taos itself is actually three towns. The oldest of them is Taos Pueblo, which is about 4 miles north to the center of the village, 4 miles north of Taos proper, the Taos Plaza, which most people know as Taos. And the third one is Ranchos de Taos. And it's actually the oldest of the Spanish/Mexican settlements. Spanish got here, that is, into New Mexico permanently in 1598. And when they moved up into the Taos area, they were very close to what is now Taos Pueblo. But between 1598 and 1680, the Spanish had so pissed off the Native American population by enslaving them and doing other things that there was a very successful revolt, 1680 Taos Pueblo Revolt, which was engineered by a guy named Popé, spelled like Pope, but an accent on the E. Popé was from Ohkay, Owingeh / San Juan Pueblo, and he was the leader of the revolt. The Spanish were effectively kicked out completely out of New Mexico. There was a killing of a lot of priests and a lot of other people.
Now, you said 1590, I think.
1598.
1598. Now, for perspective, 1598 was a long time ago, yet the Pueblo settlement here had been here for how long already?
Well, there are varying dates from 900 A.D. to 1100 A.D. I think the Pueblo itself agrees on the figure of 1100 A.D. and they figure that out by doing dendrochronology on logs and stuff that help define that date. But they believe they've been here forever.
And that settlement has been continuously occupied.
I think it's the oldest continuously occupied settlement in North America. If we exclude Mexico from North America, which it is part of North America, but most people don't think of it that way. But to put this really in perspective, 1598 was the first permanent settlement, but a guy named Coronado in 1540, on his entrada or entrance into New Mexico, had in September of 1540, one of his captains, a guy named by the name of Alvarado, and another one by the name of Barrio Nuevo, were both in Taos Pueblo. They didn't call it Taos, they called it One called it Brava, B-R-A-B-A. The other called it Valladolid, after a town in Spain. So from 1540 to 1598, there were a number of expeditions into New Mexico, but the first permanent settlement was 1598. And we're going to be going through that town later on today. This is going to be a little separate little vignette on, I think it will be, and Rob will determine that, on Taos and Taos environs. It'll be pretty brief, but giving you a background. So the Spanish Reconquista happened in 1692 to 1694, and they finally came back into New Mexico, and they extended rights to the Indians that even though they may not have been followed, they at least had them on paper, and they were treated as equal, and they could vote, amazingly. So we are coming in. We are on Kit Carson Road. Yep, that Kit Carson. He was a man of his time. The Taos Foundation House is on the left. They're part of the Taos Society of Artists. That's another whole 20-minute discussion. On the right-hand side here, these little adobe villages on the right-hand side where the American flag is right now is Kit Carson's home. He was married to two Native American women. The first one died in childbirth with his daughter. The second one divorced him, and he married the daughter of the mayor. We're entering Taos Plaza now, very historic area. And these places were part of a defenses against the Comanches and the Navajos, who raided both from the east, the Comanches, and the west.
Can we go around the whole?
And we're gonna take a ride around here. They're doing a little bit of work on the plaza here and on the courthouse. Courthouse contains some murals that were done in the courthouse itself on justice by some of the members of the Taos Society of Artists, but they are very much influenced by Diego Rivera, who was a Mexican
We just passed
muralist.
La Fonda
Hotel.
Very
Well,
famous.
La Fonda means hotel, so it's the Hotel. And then Padre Martinez statue we just passed on the left, and that is he was one of the leading people who were involved in the 1847 Taos Revolt. When the Americans came in, they revolted against. He didn't have his fingerprints on this. Can I wash a window? Oh, better not.
We're not shooting anything through the window.
Okay, I'm having trouble with this end.
Oh.
Anyhow, so Padre Martinez is he published a paper, I think it was called El Crepuscular, The Light, first newspaper printed in New Mexico, as far as I know. And we're going to exit that area. That was Taos Plaza. And we're going to enter Ladue Street. There's a lot of French names from the French trappers who chose to be part of this culture as well. Where we're right directly ahead of us is where the horse mural was. There was a gate here. This was a gated, protected area and compound because of the amount of Comanche raiding that took place here. And we stay on Ladue Street. To the left-hand side, we have Ernest Blumenshine's home and that of Herbert Buck Dunton. They were both members of the Taos Society of Artists. And if these pique your interest, do look them up. They're fascinating people. Again, Ladue Street, we get down to the Harwood Museum of Art, which looks like it's a very small building because of the scale and the architecture in this. It's actually a lot bigger than it looks, and it's a great little museum that's run by the state of New Mexico and the University of New Mexico.
And I understand it's not an insignificant museum. It's very well known. I had heard of it prior to coming here.
Right. And so we're about to, in a couple of minutes, we're going to conclude our little bit of a tour here in Taos, and we're going to move down to Ranchos de Taos. But before we do that, we're going to make a turn here, and this is called La Loma, which was not its original. La Loma means the bluff. This is one of the, Taos itself was a series of these fortified plazas because of the Indian raids that took place here by the Comanches, not necessarily by the Pueblo, because they got along. So this is one of the more intact of the original places, and we can pull up here so you can freeze frame this if you want to see. La Loma Plaza, originally called La Plazuela de San Antonio, established as a fortress in 1796. So we had the original plaza, which we went through. We had the Ladue fortress, and now we're in another one. And I'll back the car out here so you can get a look-see at this.
Oh, there's a place for sale right there.
Yep.
I'm sure it's not inexpensive.
No. And we're going to exit at the northwest corner of La Loma Plaza. Passing by that structure was on a lot I could have, woulda. And
Should have.
and this is a little capilla.
Oh, look at that little church.
In Spanish, that means chapel. And it's San Antonio de Padua Capilla. And it's a beautiful little place. A lot of these capillas were maintained by families as well.
And it must not be active because it's Sunday morning and there's no activity.
They keep them, they hold services there 3 or 4 times a year to keep them consecrated. Okay. So we're leaving there, and we're going to go to the La Loma Street, and I'll point out on the left-hand side all of these buildings here on the National Historic Register, and are beautiful little old buildings. And then,
is the Kit Carson home around near where we are?
We just went past it when we came in Kit Carson Road, where the American flag was.
Okay.
And then the mountain directly over the road right now has 3 names: Taos Mountain, Pueblo Peak, or El Monte Sagrado, which is the sacred mountain. And we're going to turn this off now, and we're going to jump back on down at Ranchos de Taos, which is the oldest of the Spanish settlements.
Before we sign off, I wanted to add a couple of things from the perspective of someone that knows far less than Jack. Wanted to share that before I came to New Mexico, even for the first time, I had heard of Taos. And here's what I thought I knew about Taos. It was like, I hear it's a hippie town. That's what I thought. Artists and hippies. And as it turns out, that's not very far off. And I happened to, before we started recording on the drive, I asked Jack, I said, how did that evolve? And what's interesting to me is Jack's mentioned the Taos Society of Artists that was established, that really started the sort of modern cultural significance of Taos.
Yeah.
And it was in the teens, which happened to be if those of you that have been following our little historical messages on the videos, Eagle Nest was really founded when the dam was completed in 1918. So these things were happening simultaneously, which I don't know why. I'm a nerd. I find that fascinating.
Well, and as an aside to that, Ernest Blumenschein, who was one of the original founders of the art colony, along with Bert Phillips, he was an inveterate trout fisherman, and he painted Eagle Nest Lake at least 5 times and fished up there a lot. So there is that tie-in.
So these artists with it, but this could easily, if I let Jack go, another 20-minute lecture, but there were artists that spent time in Paris. There was an expat community there of artists where it was felt that exposure to French influences was an essential part of being legitimatized as an artist. And these guys were kind of rebels and thought, this would be great. This is an ideal place to create a less pretentious mecca for creativity.
Absolutely. And it was that, and later on, Georgia O'Keeffe and her husband, Alfred Stieglitz, considered to be the father of modern art photography, he was insistent that we identify an American art form that was distinct from European influences. And so the evolution of modern photography and the evolution of the American school of art was certainly supported by him. He was born in the 1860s, by the way. But we had earlier on, we had Whistler and the Hudson Valley School, but distinctly an American Southwest and Western art were a decision of choice rather than being forced into it. And Georgia O'Keeffe lived here for quite a while and stayed with Mabel Dodge Lujan, but those are stories for another day, or we'll be here for 4 hours and never get to our ultimate objective today, which is Santa Fe.
So what I relate to in the story of Taos is the rebel spirit that is at the foundation of the story about modern Taos, and the idea that we can shirk off societal ideas about what it means to be creative and be an artist is, to me personally, that's a big deal. And the fact that I'm discovering this about a place I love so much, Eagle Nest, and that within a stone's throw is this whole community and these stories. And then I go in another direction and we're talking Wyatt Earp and Wild Bill Hickok and gunfights and ghosts, and it seems endless. And this is why we're doing this series on Eagle Nest as an adventure base camp. And this series, I'm thinking this will be probably 2 parts, but when you draw a circle to say I'm willing to drive on a day trip, 2.5 hours back out and 2.5 back, making it a whole day, the richness of what and excitement of what you find in that circle, and I may refer to the Enchanted Circle we've talked about and we've gone on, and the other trip Jack and I took, I call the second Enchanted Circle. And I think this imaginary circle, 2.5 hours, I might coin it as the third Enchanted Circle.
Yeah.
That radius drawn from the center of Eagle Nest, and what's in that circle for you if you come to Eagle Nest.
And to put this in perspective, we are going to, at no point today will we be further than 100 miles from Eagle Nest by road. And that's pretty interesting. I mean, that's an hour and a half or 2 hours drive, but you'll find out there's so much to see in between that I mean, there's a new adventure around every corner. Teddy Roosevelt said that the American West is where the adjective died of exhaustion, and truer words were never spoken than New Mexico, which a lot of people perceive this as a desert. You see that it's not, for sure. But the remoteness of this location and the cultural influences of the Native Americans, the Indians, and the Spanish and Mexican heritage were very freeing, not only to the trappers who came earlier, but to the Taos Society of Artists. And I think those are a lot of what is attracted, and it's still a very foreign place. But I'll turn it back to Rob.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for a while. We'll turn it back on when Jack says, turn it back on. I got something to talk about here.
Okay. we are approaching Ranchos de Taos, which is just a few miles south. And were we to go left at this light, we would be taking the high road to Taos, which we're going to travel south to north from Santa Fe rather than north to south. We're coming into the area of Ranchos de Taos, which is the oldest of the continuously occupied Spanish-Mexican areas. This was, as the name implies, there were ranches here. If you're driving this road, you'll blow right by it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go right into the plaza. On the right-hand side here is Old Martinez Hall. And the woman who bought it was German. She named it after herself, Old Martinez. That'll change. So we're coming into San Francisco de Assis, St. Francis of Assisi. And the Catholics are at the church today.
They're at church today, that's for sure.
And the back of that church has been painted many, many times by George O'Keeffe. She found that a much more contemporary look than the front of the church. But we're going to go through the old plaza. By the way, there were a couple people who bought property here on the plaza who wanted to have this paved. And to their credit, the balance of them said, not only no, but hell no, we're just going to keep it dusty. That's what this is. And these church has the bolsters. They remud it every year. They did it this year and then unfortunately had several serious thunderstorms afterwards. But you can see that it still has a great following. And
I don't think you could find a parking place if you wanted it.
San Francisco de Assis. And what we're going to do, we're going to leave this by a different route. And we are going to be, and this will be referenced later on as well.
So if you're coming to the area and you're Catholic, there's no shortages of masses to go to in the area.
No. And then we are actually on the El Camino Real del Tierra Adentro, the royal road of the interior lands. We're traveling it right now. We just come out of the plaza. We're going to make a left-hand turn here, continue on this short stretch of El Camino Real, and we're going to get back on the main highway, and then we're going to put the vehicle into warp speed and get down to Santa Fe and start our peregrinations north from the plaza in Santa Fe on the El Camino Real del Tierra Adentro, the Royal Road of the Interior Lands. There were 5 royal roads, by the way. This is the longest one. Starts in Mexico City, and it had 2 northern termini. One was Taos, and the other one was Abiquiu. And Abiquiu's for another day, but it's over in George O'Keeffe country. So we are on now the paved Camino Real, and we're going to sign off here, and we'll see it when we get down to the plaza in Santa Fe, which was where the Spanish Trail started and where this section of the El Camino Real started.
Oh, and by the way, Dottie is back there. I don't know if you can see her on the camera, but she's in the back seat enjoying herself very much. Jack created a little bed for her back there, so she's pretty happy. We'll see you in a few. All right.
Well, we are just to the north of the Rio Grande Gorge where the road goes through it. And the camera's going to flatten this out, but I can tell you this. This is one of the greatest views in the American West. It's the Rio Grande Gorge. The Rio Grande Gorge is one of 4 rift valleys of its type on Earth. It is not an eroded gorge. It's up to 880 feet deep. At its deepest, it's 2 tectonic plates that are separating and still separating. And directly ahead of you is that in 1968, this was the first river ever designated wild and scenic by the federal government. To the right, the mountains that you see, the range, are the Sangre de Cristos, the longest range in the Rockies, 252 miles long. And to the left, you have volcanic features that include Ute Mountain and San Antonio Mountain and a series of smaller mountains out there, all of which are if not most of which are volcanic in nature. And that is a 350,000 acre Rio Grande del Norte National Monument. And again, the Sangre de Cristos or Carson National Forest, and you have the National Monument, and to the left you have more national forest over in what's called the San Juan Range here. From Eagle Nest, as an example, where you take New Mexico 38, you would be a half an hour from the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument. And this monument runs from about 10 miles behind where we'll be filming this now, all the way into Colorado, which is a distance of about 25 or 30 miles from here, maybe a little bit more. Anyhow, one of the great views in the American West. There's tons of bighorn sheep. In that canyon, we have elk here, and it's a really interesting place. And we're going to turn this off. I'll turn it over to Rob. He can comment if he likes. If not, we'll see you in Santa Fe.
And all I can say is I'm hoping in editing I can expand this view and you can see it the way we're seeing it now. So I'll do my best. Okay.
Alrighty. Well, we just got off the 4-lane and we're making a left onto the original El Camino Real del Tierra Adentro, the Royal Road of the Interior Lands. And we're coming into a little old Spanish village called El Calde. And we are actually on what was the old Camino Real right now. And it is what New Mexico is. It's a hodgepodge of different cultures and different architectural styles, to put it mildly. But this is the town of El Calde. And then we'll pull in here. See, this is one of the little churches or chapels. And these don't hold services every Sunday, but they hold them several times a year, usually on holidays. And that keeps the churches consecrated under Catholic canon law. Town of El Calde.
Did you see that little sign on that house there? It said "Danger, explosives, keep away."
Yeah.
I think that would give a burglar pause.
Yeah. So this is basically just a paved cartway is what we're on right now. We're gonna have to deal with some of these stupid
Speed bumps
here. And we're heading south now. And we're approaching the areas where in 1598 the original settlements were surrounded the then called in their native tongue was called Ohkay Owingeh, but the Spanish called San Juan de los Caballeros, St. John and the gentleman, I guess that is. I don't know what my Spanish is not that good. Caballeros, I think is gentlemen. So we're gonna run this road down here for a little bit, and we're gonna be following here shortly. We're gonna pick up what's called the Acequia Madre, the mother ditch. Acequia is basically a ditch, and adobe and acequia are both Moorish words from North Africa. Of course, they came here from the Spanish, and the Spain was occupied by the Moors for about 800 years. So there's a lot of cross-pollination of those cultures here, and you can see that this hasn't changed very significantly from the original goat path and cart path, which it was. And little runs here. We're entering an area now, and you can see this was probably more what it looked like then. Beautifully tree-lined little lane here.
So, how old is this path that we're on?
This path, 1598.
Wow.
Yeah, and prior to that, see, because the Spanish didn't put in all the waterways. There were watering systems here that were pre-Columbian, and
So we're driving along something that was here 500 years ago.
we are. I mean, we are right on it. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. So, and you can see the growth that you see here is because there's water just to the right and left of us in these acequias. The acequia is actually above us here by about 10 feet and running parallel to us because they have to get the right gradient. And well, if this doesn't feel like you're in Mexico, I don't know what does. Of course, this was Mexico. Everything from the Arkansas River south, including parts of Colorado, Wyoming, California, all that. Those were taken by us as the fruits of our victory in the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 48. It's a pretty place, and we're, had we driven straight through, we're about an hour and 15 minutes, about an hour and 15 minutes from Eagle Nest. Pretty interesting stuff, I think.
Yeah.
And we're about less than a mile, we're probably going to go off of the old Spanish land grants onto Ohkay, Owingeh, San Juan, Pueblo. It was always known as San Juan since the Spanish took it over, and then the Native Americans have moved it, changed their name back, and they go by Ohkay, Owingeh now, which I think is a pretty neat thing. Flood irrigation on the right-hand side here. This is what those acequias are for. These fields were flooded. It is, what's the date in August here, Rob?
The 17th.
17th. Well, yesterday in Eagle Nest, New Mexico, as my wife sat watching the hummingbirds who were migrating through town at our feeders, she heard the first elk bugle of the season, and that will increase as we get further and further into the rutting period. So we are
And
now,
we saw an elk this morning.
Yeah, we saw
my first
this morning.
elk. And it, Jack gives me videos and tells me tales of 2,000 and a herd of elk coming through Eagle Nest. And I kidded him. I said, so there's one elk out there, Jack? Just one?
Yeah. Well,
Where are the rest of them?
yeah. That was the Indian name. I'm one elk. So we are on Ohkay, Owingeh, Pueblo right now. And I alluded to earlier about the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. That was instigated by and planned by an Indian from Ohkay, Owingeh, Pueblo here called Popé, spelled Pope with an accent on the E. And we're going to go through that Pueblo here in a few minutes. We get there a lot faster, but I keep hitting these damn speed humps. I guess they're there for a reason for people like me.
There's another one.
The Spanish got here in August of 1598 and stayed here for a few months, but they overstayed their welcome here, and they moved across the river a distance of about a mile from where this Pueblo we're about to go into. And there was another Pueblo on the west side called Owingeh. And so when the Spanish moved over there, the Pueblo people abandoned that and moved back across the river here to keep separation from them and the Spanish. Spanish were pretty harsh taskmasters and enslaved Indians and looked for tributes. We're passing the ditches to the right of us in the tree line here. So the Acequia Madre. There's little head gates there to help to water the fields that are here. So we'll be in the Pueblo here very shortly. But we're on Pueblo land now, but the actual the casinos, we have Indian gaming in the state, and that Indian gaming has caused um, an economic boom for these tribes, and it's been a very good thing. I'm not a gambler, so I don't contribute to that, but a lot of people do, and it's been a good thing for these pueblos that have been able to provide more community services and medical services and those things that are beyond what the government's programs were. So they've become less dependent on that. And we are looking at the back end of a trailer, which I got a friend of mine who's a cowboy, and he told me, yeah, he said, I spend all day looking at the south end of a northbound cow. So I know there's a lot more to that. All right, we're about to enter directly across from us. We're not going to go there. That's the dirt road. That's the original Camino Real. And this little side trip we're going to do is actually, we're going to be coming into what is the central part of Ohkay, Owingeh. You can see the corn being grown behind these adobe homes here. So this is the main area of the of Ohkay,
two churches
Owingeh.
across the street from each
two
other.
Catholic churches. So
Within 100 feet,
yeah,
200 feet of each other.
yeah. I mean, and there's obviously church services going on here because cars are parked just about everywhere. The plaza is actually to the left behind this church here. So the original plaza, which was part of the structure of most of these pueblos, and that existed before the Spanish got here, but the Spanish then developed their own plaza, and there was the law of the Indies had a prescribed layout for government buildings, churches, and military buildings to be located in certain ways on these plazas.
So are we on the reservation right now?
We are. We have been since we hit the first speed humps back there.
So that police station was a tribal police?
Tribal police, yes. And then also there's BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. So there's still some federal presence on these places as well. Interesting. The name of that road to the right there is Pumpkin Gathering Place. Misty Lake Lane. And where the stop sign is to the left here, we're coming right back out onto the Camino Real. And we're just north of Espanola. And the area we're going to go through in Espanola on the east side of the river is primarily just one of the strip areas where there's a lot of commerciality, modern commerciality. And back away from it, there's a little church called Santa Cruz, which we're not going to have time to visit today. But Santa Cruz and Espanola were the first documented areas where we could have read about the penitentes. The penitentes being a lay Catholic group, and they called themselves in Spanish Los Hermanos de la Luz, the Brothers of Light. And we're going to see a lot of the penitente presence when we travel the high road here in just a little bit. So I'm going to sign off for now. Rob, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, I don't have anything to add now. We'll going to be in Santa Fe pretty soon, and we'll see you.
Well, guys, that's the end of part one. As you can tell, I'm doing the openings and closings back in the trailer after the fact. So I hope I'm going to link at the end of this part 2, and then likewise part 3. And I hope you enjoy these wonderful day trip drives.